Well, Rosa, I mean, this is our third year running to have this discussion, but it always bears repeating. How did you come to be fascinated by Anne of Brittany and to get into what obviously has been many years of research on your part?
Well, I picked up this book by Mildred Allen Butler, which was written maybe in 1964. And I just picked it up because I liked the cover, because there was a young woman on the cover who looked so authoritative and so perfectly serene and full of confidence. And she doesn't look like she's more than 11 years old. So I read the whole thing. Sure enough, it was Anne of Brittany. I couldn't believe that this was a real story, that this girl was the hereditary successor to the ducal throne of Brittany. Her father nominated her. There was no Salic law in Brittany, so...
Explain the Salic law to our
meaning
listeners.
That a woman, in the absence of a boy, then the throne goes to the oldest female, whereas in France, with their Salic law, if there's no boys in the family, then the first son, who's the nephew or cousin of the king, he becomes the successor. And so women can only become queen consorts in France before the revolution, whereas in Brittany, in Spain, and England, women can be reigning sovereigns. So that was the difference.
In their own right. And yet the Windsors recently changed that procedure within their own dynasty to allow Princess Charlotte to be in line to the throne after her brother George.
Yes, it's really a good thing. But if you really dig down and look at the history of Europe through the Middle Ages and beyond, there's a lot of female rulers out there. Isabella of Spain, Margaret of Austria, of course, Elizabeth I, one of the greatest monarchs the world has ever known, and Anne of Brittany. And there was just nothing about her in French history books. And I spent a lot of time in France, my second year of grad school in Paris. And I had never heard of Anne of Brittany all this time I'd spent in France. And I realized it's because the French didn't like her, because she wasn't someone who just sat around next to her husband and
was demure.
Yeah, and was good at public presentations. She was the administrator and the reigning sovereign of her own separate and independent realm of Brittany, which was different from France, right next door, but independent. And so she was conducting foreign policy and wielding political power on behalf of Brittany, as her husband, Louis XII, was doing the same on behalf of France. So it was quite an interesting position that she occupied.
It was. Now, we have to go back to her father, obviously, because her father favored her, and
Yes.
Obviously must have, used the word obviously, but it seems to me from reading your books that she was very well educated.
Absolutely. Duke Francis II, Duke of Brittany, I would not say he was the best ruler that ever walked the earth. I think Anne was a much stronger administrator, but he was a very cultured and educated man. He collected tapestries. He had so many books in his library, hundreds of books. And this is just at the time when the printing press has been invented. So he's like one of the first collector of books, but also illuminated manuscripts, absolutely very aesthetically oriented, high cultural standards, and very much in favor of educating his daughters. He didn't have any sons. He had two daughters. He had about 4 illegitimate kids, including a couple boys. But back in those days, if someone is born as an illegitimate child, they have absolutely no claim to the throne whatsoever. So it was just the 2 daughters, Anne and her sister, and her father, Francis, adored Anne. And after her mother died, when Anne was 9, her father was so bereft of companionship and a partner that he leaned on his daughter from ages 9 to 11 as almost like, including her in political meetings and council meetings and as his hostess at all diplomatic events. So she really got a great training. And then by the time her father died when she was 11, it's unbelievable in these days, but back then, a girl was pretty much a woman by age 11 or 12, and she just ascended to the throne of Brittany.
What year was that?
It was 1488.